Yeah, you want me to share screen now?
Yeah. So
I'm just going to do the full screen, and then you just move to it.
okay.
Yeah, no, the red.
Show you the presentation. It's the slides.
Oh yeah.
No, I got the red out. Yeah. I can almost get it. Yeah.
Can you all see? No, go back. The title page, 3 cryptic words.
Yeah.
Arame, Oved.
Oh, yeah.
So these 3 words are famous. They're famous because they were immortalized in our Haggadah, in the opening section of the Magid. But before we came into the Haggadah, actually the verses in our Parsha this week, they're words that are recited by a farmer who brings the bikurim, the first fruits of his produce. He has to bring to the temple and have a celebration there with the Kohen. And he makes a declaration. So let's read. It's always important to read the context before we actually analyze these words. So the opening verses of our parsha say that when you come into the land and the first fruits of your produce, of the soil, you will bring to the priest. And I'm reading from verse 4.
Okay.
Priest shall take the basket from your hand and set it down in front of the altar of Hashem your God. And now, here comes the punchline. V'anita v'amarta, and you shall recite, Lifnei Adonai Elohecha, before the Lord your God, Arami oved avi,
I'm gonna.
Vayered Mitzrayma, Vayagor sham bimtei me'at, etc. And so in the JPS Chumash, this is the beginning of the declaration. They translate it as, my father was a fugitive Aramean. He went down to Egypt with meager numbers and sojourned there, but then he became a great and very populous nation. And the continuation of that is the history of the Exodus, and that now we are in this land of milk and honey, Eretz Zavat Chalav Udvash, and I'm full of gratitude to Hashem that I have this produce. So anyone here is a farmer? Raise your hand. See, no, yeah, nobody's a farmer, right? So why is it so famous? So like I said, we don't do this practice anymore. Even if we were farmers, we don't do this bikurim because there's no temple. It's famous because of the Haggadah. And in every Passover, when we sit down in the Seder, the opening section of the Magid, right after the Manishtana, when the children ask the 4 questions, we answer those questions by starting this the section called the Magid, and here's what it says there. Go and learn, Seulmad, what Laban the Aramean sought to do to Jacob our father. For whereas Pharaoh only decreed the death of the males, Laban sought to exterminate them all, as it is written, Arami Oved Avi, an Aramean tried to destroy my father. Wait a minute, you're asking. That's not what it says. We just read beforehand, my father was a fugitive Aramean. Isn't that the meaning? How do we get suddenly from this translation to the Haggadah's translation of an Aramean tried to destroy my father?
In the first one, what was the status of being what made my father a fugitive? From who? From what?
Oh no, it's not the modern meaning of fugitive. Good point. It's a wandering. I prefer the translation a wandering Aramean.
Oh, a wandering.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that changes the whole. Yeah.
Whole right connotation. Yes.
Yes.
And I just copied the JPS. I bet if I do some more research on translation, I'll probably find a good translation that says wandering.
If we take it as fugitive, I can make the connection. He was running away from the relative.
Yeah. No. So here they really mean a wandering, lost, and we'll get to that verb. We'll get to the Hebrew word oved. We have to go into a little bit of dikduk here.
So
as Charlie did in his article that he published on this subject. So let's present the questions. Here are 3 words. Arami, I think everybody agrees. That's clear. Arami means Aramean. Okay.
Right.
But who is the Aramean referred to? That's question number 1. The second word, the verb, oved, what does that exactly mean? Is it wandering? Is it destroying? Is it losing something? These are all meanings that can be attached to those 3 letters, Aleph, Bet, Dalet. And then Avi, it's again, the literal meaning of Avi is clear, my father, but which father are we talking about?
So, Shamai,
Yeah.
Aleph, Bet, Dalet, doesn't that mean lost, lose?
Yeah. We'll get to, yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, lose, exactly. We'll bring an example from modern Hebrew.
Okay.
So in biblical Hebrew, it had a broader meaning of destitution, of being penniless and poor, or just being wandering around lost in your ways. So, and we'll get to that. Okay, Rashi. We always go to Rashi, and he quotes, surprisingly, you would think he would go with Pshat, but he goes with this midrash of the Haggadah. And so he understands this sentence, as the Arami is Laban. So that's the subject of our sentence. Oved, destroyed, and that would make it a transitive verb. So transitive means it has to have a direct object. So who did he destroy? He destroyed Avi. He destroyed my father Jacob. So subject, verb, and then direct object. But his grandson, the Rashbam, says, no, Grandpa, you're wrong. That cannot be the meaning of this verse. And Rashbam says, no, this verse has nothing to do with Laban. Not only is he not mentioned by name, but it makes no sense. And we'll see why it makes no sense. He offers a different explanation. Rashbam says, my father Abraham was lost and exiled from his birthplace, Aram. You know, he was born in Aram Naharaim. So here's how he reads it. Avi was an Arami Oved. So Oved is just a descriptive, an adjective describing Arami. It's not a verb, a transitive verb, right? So he totally changes how he understands the grammatical structure of the subject is not Arami. The subject of the sentence is Avi, my father, and it's referring to Abraham, our father Abraham. And he was a lost Aramean. Why was he a lost Aramean? And he brings verses that Abraham himself, when he talks to Avimelech, he says, when God told me to move, Lech Lecha, I felt like I'm lost, like I'm wandering with no clear direction where I'm going to end up. And so the other important thing here to understand is that he takes the word oved as an intransitive verb. So again, wandering or lost in the wilderness. And now let's get more into the problems with the Haggadah and with Rashi, because we said Haggadah and Rashi are the same. They say that Laban, okay, so what are the problems? Here's Ibn Ezra. So now let's get into the roots of the meaning, and Aaron mentioned this. So avad, the root Aleph Bet Dalet, can mean loss, losing direction, destruction. But the way it appears in our verse, oved, it's in the intransitive form. So like Charlie likes to say, for those grammar junkies, we have binyanim, different binyanim in Hebrew. I guess you could call them different forms of the same root. Conjugations, yes, thank you. So the binyan kal is you use it when it's an intransitive verb. And that's how it's used in our verse. If it were to mean to destroy something, in other words, a transitive verb that needs a direct object, it should have appeared in one of these two forms that you see here. Me'abed, with a mem prefix, me, or ma'avid. Okay? And now to your question, Aaron. So in modern Hebrew, you also have this distinction between, if you just want to say something was lost, this is what you would say. So anybody can translate the red line, "Hapelefon sheli avad."
My cell phone was lost.
Exactly. You don't know who lost it. You're not saying that somebody caused it to be lost. It's not a causative form. It's what I call binyan, or what is called binyan kal, the intransitive form. Because you just want to say it's lost. My telephone, that's how we say cellular phone in the Hebrew, was lost. It became lost. Whereas if you wanted to use the transitive form, that's the line in blue. Haben sheli me'abed et hapelefon shelo kol hazman. Anybody want to give it a try?
My son loses his cell phone all the time.
Excellent. Thank
As
you.
you can see, I still have my cell phone.
Yes, and it's just an example. Leave doesn't do but you see how the root changed from avad, it became me'abed. Why? Because now it's a transitive verb. Because you're saying he lost something. What did he lose? He lost the telephone. So, and you have somebody who caused it to happen, right? So that's, in modern Hebrew, we have that differentiation too. And so when the Torah used the red form that you have here in red, avad, it can't take on the meaning of to destroy something, because that's the blue meaning. That's when it's a transitive. It should have been ma'avid or me'abed. So that's problem number one. What's the second problem with Rashi or with the Haggadah that maybe somebody can come up with? It's even a bigger problem. It's not related to grammar. It's related to the whole context. What's the problem of, let's go back. If you say that, here's what the farmer says. Laban, or let's go back actually to the text. Here. The farmer is standing before God, and don't look at the translation. Let's go with Rashi, with Haggadah. Laban destroyed my father, and then he went down to Egypt at meager numbers and sojourned there, etc., etc. So what troubles you with that, if that's the interpretation? So Ibn Ezra has a great kasha on. He says Laban had nothing to do with Jacob's going down to Egypt. I mean, what started the going down to Egypt?
Famine.
Famine. Yeah.
Famine, yeah.
Well, before that even. Oh, right. The Joseph story, right, and then the famine.
Yeah.
But so the Joseph story, you could say that caused, or the jealousy between the brothers, or the famine. But the whole preceding chapters in Genesis, the whole quarrels between Laban, that has been already resolved. So it has nothing to do with Jacob's going down to Egypt. So it wouldn't make any sense for the farmer to say that Laban tried to destroy my father, then he went down to Egypt. So instead, therefore, Ibn Ezra suggests that this interpretation, which is similar to Rashbam, to Rashi's grandson, but he said it's not talking about Abraham, it's talking about Jacob. So he explains it like this. My father, Jacob, that's Avi, was, he says in Hebrew, ready to perish Aramean. And he brings proof from other places in the Bible that Oved can mean penniless, poor. And so that now it fits into the context. If we go back, so my father was penniless Aramean, then he went down to Egypt, and then became a nation and got a nation. Then we became wealthy. Now we have land. Now we have produce. So it all fits into the narrative. We started off penniless, poor, with nothing, or our forefather Jacob started that way. But now I'm thankful that I have this produce. So it fits very well into the context. Okay. Seforno, the Italian commentator from the 16th century, also goes along with Ibn Ezra. And the only difference is that how he understands the Oved, not so much penniless or poor, but again, wandering around, lost. And he says, Yaakov, who was for a while wandering, lost person without a home of his own, and was not at the time able to establish a nation. And now here we are a nation, and we're thankful to God, and we're giving credit, and we want to give gratitude. And so finally, we ask, why did the Haggadah take this verse out of its context? So it seems that, remember, it was written after the destruction of the Second Temple, and the editors had an agenda. By that, I don't mean it in a negative sense, but they wanted the Haggadah to uplift people and say, just like God saved our forefathers, then so too he will save us, and eventually we're going to return to our land. And so that's why they tried to say, look, we're gonna take these words Arami Oved Avi and make an interpretation of God saved Jacob from Laban. Okay, Laban tried to destroy him, but God saved him, because we want people to feel uplifted and inspired and to believe that they too will be saved and be redeemed and come back to the land. So now that we did that, and we realize that the Pshat is really not talking about Laban trying to destroy Jacob, let's ask ourselves, what did happen in the end of the story of Jacob and Laban? Who remembers how did that end? And that's how we're going to end. How did it end? Did they, what?
Gal'ed, they made a pact with a pile of stones.
Ah, so Mother, maybe you saw this picture. This is by a famous artist, forgot his name.
Yeah.
A picture of the reconciliation. As my mother said, they, I don't know if you can see the Gal'ed, the stone monument here. I'm not sure where it is. Yeah, I see a stone there. Yeah, that could be the Gal'ed. And that's how the story ends, in a very uplifting way. That even these two who were sworn are enemies and were ready to harm each other. Remember, Laban was chasing Yaakov, and God comes to him and says, do not touch him. That means that there was an imminent threat. Yet they were both able to rise above the bad blood between them. And as you see, and the picture is a nice picture. I like it, and it fits the Torah. This is not made up stuff. This is, if I read to you just one verse, they took an oath. They said, here is a heap and here is a pillar. This is a witness that I will not do you harm and you will not do me harm. And then they ate. Of course, there has to be some eating. They spent the night there. And then Laban kissed his grandchildren and his daughters and blessed them. Then he left and returned home. So nothing about destroying and killing and threatening. It ended in a very, very optimistic way. And that's a lesson for all of us, that even with our enemies, hopefully we can overcome the past bad blood that's between Israel and its surrounding neighbors and the Palestinians. And we can also get to that level, as did Yaakov and Laban. And with that,
Yashikoa.
and with that, we'll now read the verses that we talked about. So we're going to take out the Torah. Okay.